Welcome back to Great Day Houston. Houstonians are still trying to figure out if bodies found in the bayou are the result of a serial killer, or is it just a convenient place for any killer to hide a body? When it comes to these criminals, psychologists have wrestled with this question for decades. Are serial killers born or made? Danielle Blinka is the host of Bad Acts, a true crime podcast. She joins us with a closer look at 3 serial killers in particular and what drove them to do it, not for financial gain, but for nothing other than the thrill of a kill. And that's the thing that really bothers us as humans,
For
right?
sure.
All right, let me ask you, what do you think is happening in the bayous? Is it just a convenient place for people if they're going to kill someone to dump a body, or is there a serial killer in the mix?
I think it's a mix. I definitely think that there's a serial killer. Like, I know it's considered a conspiracy theory, but there's so many bodies. They're finding way more than any other year. But I also think it could be just a convenient place where, like, random people are dumping bodies, and definitely probably some accidents as well.
Wow. Okay. When did your love and your interest of, it's funny because it just now became popular as a genre spoken out loud, but I think it's always been popular as a genre. When did your interest in this arise?
Definitely when I was a child. My mom also liked true crime, and so she introduced me to it. We would just watch shows like Dateline together.
Snapped. You're binge watching all that stuff, right?
Yes, Snapped is amazing.
And then 2018, you got hooked onto a podcast, devoured them, and and during the pandemic, of course, a lot of us did.
Yes, I love true crime podcasts. I've listened to so many, and that's what inspired me to make one in 2020. I had time, and I just felt like I should make something that was what I was looking for. So that's how Bad Acts was born.
Yeah. Bad Acts, a true crime podcast. And here's the thing about it. You're not just recounting what we already know. You're going beyond.
Yes. I always try to go as deep as possible because I think that's really what we all want to know. We want to know the most details about everything from the victims to the killers. So what motivated these people to do these things, or just what to be aware of, because even if we don't completely get to the bottom of why someone did something, just seeing the patterns can help us spot those patterns.
And be aware, be more aware.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. You go into court records, you read over witness accounts, and as we know, sometimes people like you in these podcasts have picked up on things that even the investigators didn't. Just one little word or something that can change the outcome. All right. You also love the new crime-solving methods, which are always evolving. Yes. One of them, genetic genealogy.
Genetic genealogy is amazing. I mean, these people almost are like doing magic, just taking these DNA samples from a crime scene and comparing them to familial DNA to try to find the families of these killers, so that,
because the example is, so like that person who committed the crime, their DNA may not be in the system.
Exactly.
However, if somebody said, hey everybody, let's do our ancestry DNA, it's out there. They can still connect the dots.
Yeah, so you can find dark secrets in your family's past.
Yeah. You know, it's one of them that happened that way. It was interesting. They found the DNA and they went to this woman. They said, you committed this murder. She's like, no, I did not. She's like, I did not do this. They're like, it's your DNA, and this DNA doesn't lie. Turns out she had an identical twin sister.
That is so crazy.
Who was a baddie. Yeah, she's the one that did that. All right. Serial killers, born or made? Sometimes probably both, but probably more made?
Yeah, it's kind of a mixture. There are definitely people who were born with like psychopathic traits, with lack of empathy, but not everyone who has psychopathic traits becomes a killer. Some people are just out there, you know, trying to make as much money as possible or mooching off their family members. But the people that do become killers usually do have things like trauma in their background, and there's something that kind of triggered them to go on this journey of murder instead of something safer.
And they're crafty. They appear likable or trustworthy to gain control over their victims, right?
Yes.
But they struggle to form genuine connections. Psychologically, lack of empathy, need for control and dominance. They ignore rules, laws, and social norms, and behavioral traits. Organized, methodical planning, trophies or souvenirs from the victims is something they do, and they have cooling off periods where they seem to act normal, and then something, triggers them again.
Yes, and that's one of the things that makes these people so scary, is because they can come off as very normal, and they can be very manipulative because of that charismatic front they can put on. And one of the killers that we're actually talking about was arrested and charged with so many crimes, and even went to trial for some of the murders and assaults that he committed, but still got off because he's just so charismatic
Yeah.
for those short periods of time.
And then we have, everybody remembers the railroad killer, because he committed murders here in Houston as well, Rafael Resendez Ramirez.
Yes.
So as opposed to being charismatic, he was somebody who kind of flew under the radar, because he was, wasn't a big man, 5'4". They said, kind of quiet. But when we say born or made, when you look at how he grew up, I think you're not surprised that this man had this much rage in him.
Exactly. Yeah, he was very traumatized as a child. He was also sexually assaulted as a child, and those types of experiences shaped him and made him someone who had trouble fitting in with society, and eventually that provoked him into killing people.
Yeah. In fact, he was 11 years old. He had run away from home. And but the reason why he did, his mother was abusive, born to teenage parents. Just because you're born to teenage parents doesn't mean you're going to do this.
No.
But mother was abusive. She sent him to live with his uncle, and he sexually abused him at 6 years old.
Yeah.
And so did the town pedophile. He also offered him up to him as well. They think he killed up to about 15 people, and the reason why they call him the railroad killer is he would ride the trains and get off. Personal story, I lived in Westview at the time that the doctor in Westview was murdered. And the person who was living with me at the time, Cynthia Hunt, who was a fabulous reporter, she said she heard him say when he got arrested that the only thing that ever loved him was his dog.
Yeah.
She sent him a picture of her dog, and she said, I understand how you feel. He ended up writing a letter back, and I pulled that letter out of my mailbox, and I realized that I was looking at the handwriting of a serial killer.
Wow.
And he detailed every murder he had ever done and why he did it. And that's what the prosecution used in the case, but it was crazy. But anyway, he did things like laid out his victims' driver's licenses to gather the info on the victims. He stole jewelry and gave those mementos, which we see oftentimes.
To his wife and mom. They always want to give jewelry to their wife and mom, because then they can see it when they're wearing it, and it reminds them of the murders.
Yeah. So the other thing that comes into play with some serial killers, of course, is the mental illness piece.
Yes.
Most of the time, someone who's mentally ill is more likely to harm themselves than others. But he said he was half man, half angel, so he could not be executed because he could not die. He was executed in 2006. So in that case, when we say born or made,
I do still think it's both, because I think his past really had a big impact on him. So more made, I guess, than.
Okay. All right, America's most prolific serial killer. A lot of people, you didn't hear about him till recently, Samuel Little.
Yes. Samuel Little wasn't caught until 2012, and he was the one I was mentioning earlier who kept getting away with it, because he is confirmed to have committed murders from 1970 to about 2005 for sure. Like that he's been linked to, he confessed, there's DNA evidence, everything.
Yeah.
But he's confessed, before he died, he confessed to 93 murders.
Wow.
They've confirmed 60, but he probably did commit the other murders, but he was mostly targeting people who were marginalized, mostly sex workers, and sometimes they were marginalized minority sex workers. So that is more likely to not be investigated.
Yeah. And here's the crazy thing. At first they thought he was bragging, because we know a lot of serial killers would be very braggadocious. But he said, no. And he was drawing sketches of each one of his victims. He was able to remember. And these sketches right here, when they started comparing them to the missing women or the women that he was connected to killing, it was uncanny how his memory was to be able to do this.
Yes.
So they're like, we probably believe that he did closer to 93. All right. Born or made, tell us about his background.
Well, he also was born to a teenage parent. His mom was a sex worker, and she was using drugs, and his father was only 19. So his dad was never really in his life. He grew up with his grandmother, who did take him in, and they tried to be really strict with him, but he started showing problems from a very early age.
Yeah.
He said he started fantasizing about strangling women in kindergarten when he saw his teacher touch her neck.
Just something as simple as that. She just touched her neck, and he started collecting true crime magazines featuring strangulation of women. He was arrested in 8 different states for all kinds of things. And as you mentioned earlier, the crazy thing is he was arrested 2 or 3 times for murder by strangulation, but they didn't have enough evidence to keep him.
And one of the problems that was happening is because pretty much all the victims were sex workers or they were homeless.
Yeah.
And because of that, their testimonies, when they did survive, because a couple of victims survived and turned him in, but the juries didn't believe them.
Wow.
And so they kept letting this man go, and he literally killed at least 60 people. Most likely he did commit 93 murders. So.
All right, America's first serial killer that we know of.
H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes is fascinating because he supposedly built a murder hotel, although currently experts dispute that. They think those claims were exaggerated. But his murder hotel supposedly had chutes for the bodies to fall. It was supposedly had doors that locked from the outside instead of the inside. And so people that were going to the Chicago World's Fair could book into this hotel, and allegedly he was murdering the guests.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, and then there's another one here, the Gainesville Ripper, which inspired Scream.
Yes, the Gainesville Ripper, his name was Danny Rawling, and he killed 5 college students in just a 4-day period in the 1990s. And this inspired the screenwriter of Scream to base Ghostface on him. But ironically, Rawling was actually worse than the Scream Ghostface killer because he posed all his bodies in really grotesque ways to scare and shock people who found them.
Yeah, we have better tools today than ever before to catch a serial killer, but one of the things they still need to do better on connecting dots, according to law enforcement, is that when they go from state to state, because you have to share that information.
Yes, sharing is caring in crime,
Yeah.
because killers know how to work the system, so the system constantly has to be coming up with new ways to catch them.
Yeah, all right, your latest episodes will involve what?
We're going to be talking about the psyche of a serial killer, and the one that came out today is about Dean Corll, our Houston's most notorious serial killer, and lots of information about him and also his victims.
Yeah, that's the one. Was that the Candyman?
Yes, the Candyman, and he also mostly took his victims from the Heights. It's a very local case for us.
And they called him Candyman because he would hand out, his mom had a candy store, and he would hand out candy to all the kids. But yeah, you have to listen to our episode because it is an incredible story in terms of how he was able to do all that and the why, right? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So interesting. All right, to hear more about notorious serial killers and other murder mysteries, you can listen to Danielle Blinka's Bad Acts, a true crime podcast, wherever you get your podcast.